Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where you noticed logical inconsistencies, but when you pointed them out, the reaction was not interest, but irritation? Have you ever questioned a widely accepted belief only to be met with hostility rather than curiosity? This is because in used critically, a system that depends on mass conformity. This is why history is filled with cases of thinkers, writers, and philosophers being silenced. Socrates was executed for encouraging people to think independently. Galileo was forced to recant his scientific discoveries because they contradicted religious doctrine. Even in modern times, intellectuals who challenge mainstream narratives often face social and professional consequences. This pattern reveals something disturbing. Intelligence is not just resented, it is often suppressed. But beyond these external forces, there is an even deeper psychological component at play. Human beings by nature seek belonging. We are social creatures, and one of our deepest fears is exclusion. Intelligence, however, often leads to alienation. Those who think differently, who see the world with greater depth, often find themselves isolated, not because they wish to be, but because their way of thinking naturally sets them apart. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation where you noticed logical inconsistencies, but when you pointed them out, the reaction was not interest, but irritation? Have you ever questioned a widely accepted belief only to be met with hostility rather than curiosity? This is because intelligence, when it contradicts the dominant worldview, is perceived not as insight, but as an attack. It forces people to reconsider their beliefs, and this is something most are unwilling to do. Schopenhauer described this phenomenon in his philosophy of pessimism. He believed that people do not seek truth, but rather they seek to avoid suffering. And truth, more often than not, is painful. It forces individuals to confront their own ignorance, their own limitations, and even their own mortality. Intelligence does not offer comfort, it offers reality, and reality is not always kind. This is why intelligent individuals often struggle with loneliness. They see through illusions that others accept without question. They notice patterns of manipulation in politics, media, and culture. They see how history repeats itself, how the same mistakes are made over and over again. And yet, despite their insights, they are rarely listened to. Instead, they are dismissed as overly critical, cynical, or even paranoid. But there is something even more dangerous that happens when intelligence is rejected on a large scale. When societies consistently suppress or ignore the most intelligent among them, they begin to decline. Innovation slows, progress is hindered. Instead of advancing, societies become stagnant, repeating the same mistakes and falling into cycles of ignorance and decay. Many great civilizations throughout history have collapsed not because they lacked intelligence, but because they refused to listen to it. This raises a critical question. If intelligence is so crucial for progress, why does society continually resist it? The answer lies in the balance between order and chaos. Intelligence introduces chaos because it challenges existing structures. Society, in order to function, requires stability, and stability often comes at the cost of suppressing ideas that could create too much disruption. But there is a paradox here. While intelligence is often resisted, it is also necessary. The very same individuals who are dismissed, ignored, or even ridiculed are the ones who push humanity forward. Every major breakthrough in science, philosophy, and technology has come from those who dared to think differently, despite the resistance they faced. So what does this mean for those who are intelligent in a world that seems to resent them? How can one navigate a society that both needs intelligence and fears it at the same time? And what is the ultimate consequence of living in a world where intelligence is not only undervalued but actively suppressed? In the next part, we will explore these questions in depth. We will uncover the hidden costs of intelligence, the psychological burden of seeing reality too clearly, and the final, most unsettling truth about why society rejects those who think beyond the ordinary. The paradox of intelligence is that while society needs it to progress, it simultaneously rejects and suppresses it. But why does this happen on such a consistent basis? Why do the most insightful minds often struggle the most, not just with external rejection, but with their own internal battles? The answer lies in the psychological burden that comes with intelligence. To see the world clearly is both a gift and a curse. On one hand, intelligence allows for greater understanding, deeper insights, and the ability to foresee consequences that others miss. But on the other hand, it also leads to frustration, alienation, and an overwhelming awareness of problems that others either do not see or choose to ignore. This heightened awareness can be exhausting. Intelligent individuals often find themselves burdened with thoughts that others dismiss as irrelevant or pessimistic. Have you ever noticed how easy it is for some people to go through life without questioning anything? They accept traditions, follow social norms, and believe whatever they are told. They do not seem troubled by inconsistencies, contradictions, or the irrationality of human behavior. This is because ignorance, whether natural or intentional, provides a kind of mental peace. Those who do not think deeply are often happier because they are not burdened by the weight of knowledge. Schopenhauer believed that suffering was an inevitable consequence of intelligence. The more one understands reality, the more one sees its imperfections. He argued that most people avoid deep thought because it leads to discomfort, while those who cannot help but think deeply often experience loneliness, frustration, and even despair. It is not intelligence itself that causes suffering, it is the awareness that comes with it. But beyond the personal burden, intelligence also creates a social problem. Intelligent individuals disrupt harmony. They ask too many questions, expose flaws in systems, and resist mindless conformity. This makes them difficult to control, and society at its core thrives on control. It depends on people following rules, accepting authority, and functioning as predictable, cooperative units. Intelligence, however, introduces unpredictability. It creates individuals who challenge norms rather than blindly following them. This is why intelligent people are often seen as troublemakers rather than visionaries. Their insights, no matter how valuable, are perceived as disruptive rather than helpful. This is especially true in environments where authority is built on unquestioned obedience. Whether in politics, religion, or corporate structures, those who think independently are often sidelined, excluded, or even punished for their unwillingness to conform. And yet, intelligence is necessary. It is the foundation of progress. Every major breakthrough, whether in science, philosophy, or technology, has come from those who refuse to accept conventional thinking. But because these individuals threaten existing power structures, they are often rejected until their ideas become impossible to ignore. Consider how many thinkers were ridiculed before being recognized as geniuses. Nikola Tesla died in poverty despite his groundbreaking work. Vincent van Gogh was dismissed as a madman in his lifetime. Even Albert Einstein's ideas were initially met with skepticism before revolutionizing physics. The pattern is clear. Intelligence is resisted until it becomes undeniable. But what happens to those whose intelligence is never recognized? What about the countless individuals who see the world clearly but are never given a voice? They often experience deep frustration, a sense of isolation, and in many cases self-doubt. They wonder if there is something wrong with them because their way of thinking does not align with those around them. But the truth is, their struggle is not a reflection of their failure. It is a consequence of their clarity. So what can be done? If intelligence leads to resistance, rejection, and even suffering, how should highly intelligent individuals navigate a world that seems to resent them? Should they suppress their intelligence to fit in? Should they isolate themselves completely? Or is there another way? In the final part, we will uncover the most important truth of all, one that will not only explain why intelligence is hated, but also reveal how those who possess it can find meaning, purpose, and even fulfillment in a world that often refuses to understand them. So, if intelligence is both a gift and a burden, how can those who possess it find their place in a world that resists them? Should they resign themselves to isolation? Should they suppress their insights to blend in? Or is there another path, one that allows them to embrace their intelligence while still finding meaning and connection? To answer this, we must first acknowledge an uncomfortable truth. Society is not designed for the highly intelligent. It is structured around efficiency, predictability, and conformity. Those who think deeply, question assumptions, or see beyond the surface often struggle within this structure. But that does not mean they are destined to suffer. It simply means they must approach life differently. The first step is understanding that rejection does not mean failure. If you are intelligent and feel misunderstood, it is not because you are broken. It is because you are different. And being different, while difficult, is not a flaw. Many of history's greatest minds faced the same struggles.